You will own nothing and you will be happy. Welcome to The Big Puzzle. In this podcast, we explore the subtle connections between science, religion, politics, economics, and history. One piece at a time, we unveil the big picture of this shared experience that we call life. So, when I started to take notes for this episode, I realized it would take too long to go through all the things I want to cover. So I'm going to split it in several episodes. In this one, I want to talk a little about the economy. We will be talking more about capitalism and why capitalism is important, but also how it can be cheated and how we have to be very careful. So let's talk about the economy. In previous episodes, I usually used a simplified version of an economy to explain some concepts. In that, if you remember, in those I usually talk about a country whose economy is only having one cow, and then they print $100. So now the cow is worth $100, right? And if they keep printing money, the only thing that they're doing is increasing the price of the cow until they get a second cow and so on, right? That is an easy way to explain how inflation works in simple terms when you have a mismatch between the amount of money that the government printed compared to the amount of wealth, in this case measured in cows. Let's start with a similar example, but let's make it a little more interesting. Now let's talk about having one house. So the whole economy of that country is a house. And they decided that the price for that house is $100,000, right? So now again, you have this parity between the wealth of the country and the amount of money that represent that wealth. But something interesting happens. So let's say that somebody wants to buy that house, but they don't have $100,000. So what could they do? Well, one thing is they could wait and earn $100,000 and then, they go and buy the house, but they want or they need the house now. So the owner of the house gives them this option. Say, okay, you know what? You can pay me in installments. You can pay me, $10,000 a month, and you can do it for 20 months. Right? So can you afford that? So the person does the math. Say, yeah, I think I can do that. Right? So for 20 months, this person comes and pays the owner of the house $10,000. So we have a problem. In the first 10 months, there's no more money. Right? They already paid $100,000. So they have to convince the government to print another $100,000 for the next 20 months. Well, this government is gullible and they do that. So what is now the price for the house? Is it $100,000 or is it $200,000? What was it a case of inflation? How did that happen? Because there's nothing tricky here. So the person really bought the house. It's not like the government was trying to pay for some other stuff or whatever. So where do the other $100,000 go, right? And this is the concept. The concept is that they didn't pay $200,000 for the house. They only pay $100,000 for the house. That's the actual cost, and the other $100,000 went to a service. So the owner of the house provided a service to the buyer of the house. What is that service? Well, he gave him the money, basically, right? He spread the payments in time. And why wouldn't they just say, okay, just pay me $10,000 for 10 months and then we're done because you paid the $100,000 that's worth a house. Why would they charge more? And this is where it becomes interesting, because if you go even to the Bible, is what we will call usury, right? So usury is basically the cost of lending money, and the Bible, in the Bible, God is completely against usury. That could lead to another whole discussion. But from the economic point of view, yeah, you're providing a service. And why those extra $100,000? Well, first of all, this person, if they receive the $100,000 in day one, they can do whatever they want with that, right? At that same moment, they just exchange a house for the corresponding money, and they could go and buy other house, let's say in another country or whatever, right? But they could start using that money. When they don't get that money, they had to wait for 20 months. That has a cost, right? Maybe they could invest that money in, some other company, or they could create some more value using that money. And since they don't have it, they should be compensated for that. It is a valid thing. So when we are renting something, let's say that we're renting a house, we're basically paying for the use of the house. Well, in this case, they're not renting the house, they're renting the money to buy the house. But renting money also has a cost. So basically what we call an interest in general, the interest that they pay over the capital, the $100,000 or the cost of the good of the house, that interest, it comes for that. It's the cost of renting that money. And why wouldn't the person ask for $300,000 or $500,000 or whatever? Well, because again, in capitalism, you will have different people offering different houses, right? So they can't get crazy and ask for whatever they want, because if we had more than one house, well, the person could go to the next house and buy. So there's competition, and that competition brings the cost of renting the money lower, right? So it brings it to an equilibrium between what people are willing to pay and what people want to get for renting their money. So this then is another part of the wealth of the country. Not only the good, in this case the house, but also the service. So those $200,000 in the economy represent both. Part goes to the house and part goes to the servicing, the paying for the service of renting that money. So everything is good, right? Well, not really, because let's say that next time the person wants to sell the house, but they're not going to lend any money. They're just going to sell it for somebody who comes with $100,000. And there's two people who have $100,000 now, right? Because there's $200,000 in the economy. So if the service, if this money lending service it gets reduced or even disappears from the economy, that turns immediately into inflation. Or the other way around, if you need just to do more lending, then you don't have enough money and you have to print more. So you can see how things become really complicated really fast once you add services, because a service, once is produced, it disappears, right? It's not part of the economy anymore. And that's why, it's very difficult to keep that balance, especially if we talk about dollars, or we talk how dollars are basically what is called the reserve currency. That means that it's the currency that all the world uses, right? So it becomes even more complicated, because it's not just about the wealth of your country, it's the wealth that around the world that dollar is representing. So that puts, like we talked in a previous video, the United States in a very peculiar situation. A lot of power, You know, they replaced basically the British with the pound. Now it's the Americans with the dollar. So it gives them a lot of power, but also a lot of responsibility. So they can mess things up. We can mess things up now that I am also an American. So the concept then of services disappear, goods stay. In this case, the good is the house. The house doesn't go away. But again, it's not the same thing. A new house than a house that is 200 years old. So there is some deterioration of the goods that also has to be contemplated in the economy. Where am I going with all of this? Well, I want to talk. I'm probably going to do it in the next video because I want this to be as short as possible, just introduce this concept. I want to talk about the business of services, right? And how those are good, are necessary, are part of a healthy economic, capitalistic, free market system, but they could be abused, right? And this connects to another piece of the puzzle that I mentioned in the past, and that was that the economy in the short term is a soft science, and in the long term is a hard science, right? And I always say in the long term, it's basically energy transfer, right? And I don't know if we ever talk in detail, but we will sometime. But believe me, it's just physics, mostly thermodynamics. Economics is thermodynamics in the long term, but in the short term, it's more about expectations that could be manipulated. It's about uncertainty. It's about human tendencies, and those can change, can be, like I said, manipulated, can be created, can be destroyed, and that's what we're going to be talking about, how services could exploit some of the worst things that we have as humans, right? And make us all worse. So using capitalism, you could really ruin a society. Now you might argue, well, then we need to try another system like socialism. And I would say to that, that's like burning with hot water and then to heal pour some acid, right? Sulfuric acid on the wound. That is not the solution. The solution is quite different, and that's what we're going to be talking about in the next episode. But just as a teaser, we're not going in that direction. In the direction of how to solve that problem. We're actually running faster and faster into that problem. Okay, so I will leave this one here. I hope that you can think a little about the economy, the services, the goods, how we're making decisions about what we need, what we want, and those will be helpful in the next discussion. That will be for this one, so see you in the next one. Bye.